that brand, that license you use might be that reason why people say yes and go into it. But if the product isn't good enough, that's the third level. You might get that first time purchase, but you won't get purchase again.
Welcome to The Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps. And that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to The Fearless Foodie. Today's episode is about something that we don't necessarily always have front of mind when we are developing products. And that is like how people are cooking and how things are changing, because it's very easy to design products based on some assumptions. So we think we know how people are using our products or how they cook or how they want to eat or how we imagine a product might be used. But in real life, in most kitchens, it looks very different. People are busy, they're mixing different cuisines and not really thinking about what they're doing. They're using shortcuts, but they still do want food that feels exciting, but it has to work on a middle of a Tuesday night. So today I'm joined by Scott Dixon, who is Managing Director of the Flava People. It's a family-run business that's evolved from supplying seasonings to high street butchers into working with brands, manufacturers, retailers across the industry now. In this conversation, we talk about how cooking habits have changed over time and how they've adapted as a business as a result, and why formats like paste, sauces, seasonings tend to work so well in modern kitchens, and why the biggest risk in product development is often those assumptions that we think we know our consumers and we think we know how they're going to use their product, because it's about designing products for real life, isn't it? Not just for trends or like the ideal scenario. That's where the real opportunity sits. So a really great episode for anybody that is thinking about how they continue to adapt and innovate in their category, because Flava People have done a great job of that. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Fearless Foodie. Today we are joined by Scott Dixon, who is Managing Director at the Flava People. Hi, Scott.
Hi there. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Let's start by telling people who you are, what the Flava People is about, all of that jazz.
So yeah, I'm Scott Dixon. I guess I was born into the food trade. My family line was in butchery originally, but I didn't follow that path. I went into the brand kind of advertising world originally. I then, the family business was in butchery originally, but was evolving as everything had to evolve and the high street changed. My granddad, who was a butcher, came up with a bit of an idea with my dad around added value seasonings into the butchery trade. So walk into any butcher's, see a red tub in the background, and you'll kind of see our seasonings, which is your Chinese, your cardamom, your barbecue, all those kind of what are staple flavors now, but weren't in the 70s. Business evolved into a full source seasoning business, which is what I've been running and managing for the last 12 years or so. So yeah, bring in some of my experience on the brand side of things, but mostly it's all about the food and flavor side of it. So
yeah. So you tried to escape the family business, but you got drawn back in.
yeah, I mean, I skipped butchery. These hands are not butcher's hands. And my granddad was incredibly disappointed with my sausage linking skills
Oh, really?
before a few years ago. But I tried, and yeah, we still work with a lot of butchers. It's about a quarter of our business today. Still a real core bit and that premium side of the market generally. But yes, I did not go down the butchery route. I escaped meat, London, worked in brand, but then ended up back in Manchester working for the business.
Well, I actually, two of my grandfathers were butchers, and my first ever job was in a sausage factory, and when I was, they got us on the line. I was on a grad scheme, so I wasn't actually doing it, but they were like giving me a go. They were like, "Oh, you're a natural pork butcher," and I was like, "Yeah, it's in my blood." It's like, no, not really.
You perform the sound of things. That's the opposite of what feedback I got.
Yeah, but anyway, so the Flava People do all sorts of different things, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But when we were talking about you coming on the podcast, we were talking about how, like, because I think it's really interesting how obviously your family has evolved that, because it's seen an opportunity, like you say, butchery was on, or the high street butcher was on the way down. How do we add values like the supermarket were adding value, I guess, at that time, 70s, 80s. and then has continued to evolve what it's doing. And I thought that was really interesting. And also thinking about the bit of you that's done the brand stuff as well. It's like actually starting to think about how food businesses adapt to the changing consumer, because that's effectively what you've done, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think in any trade, but particularly in food and hospitality now, if you don't adapt, you do die, or it's a matter of time because it moves so quickly. And I think we've gone through probably two or three kind of evolution stages, which was supplying into the high street, then supplying into the kind of the major manufacturers, which is all your butchers at scale, basically all the meat businesses we know in the UK, and then obviously retailers. And I guess that definition, what added value has changed as well, right? We could just add value through adding a Chinese glaze 40, 50 years ago because there
Yeah.
wasn't anybody to yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But today, so I'm one of 50 companies that can provide that seasoning. So I think for me, the evolution, I guess the phase that I took over was into more of the brand and having a bit more ownership of the brand licensing part of thing, bringing brands in to add another layer of value onto what we were doing over and above just the flavor and the product that we were doing as well, and the kind of flavor expertise. So yeah, you've got to keep layering that added value on to make sure that you do stand out. And if you stand still within that, you're really going to struggle to compete. So thankfully I've had the free reign to be able to look at what that next chapter was and how we add value in a different way.
Yeah. So what are you seeing? Because you do, like you say, you do like seasonings, you do all like pastes and the packets and all of that sort of stuff, don't you? And when we were talking, I was talking about the fact that I am a heavy buyer of that stuff. Like, so I am somebody who is, I trained as a chef, like I know how to cook, but I have no time. But I want things to taste nice. So there's got to be, I'm not the only one that's in that bracket. Is that what, talk to me about how you are seeing how different consumers are. It's not even about shopping, is it? It's about actually cooking and consuming.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a couple of things. I think, yeah, obviously everybody's feeling time pressured, whatever you're doing. Yeah, obviously, yes, with everything going on with social media and everybody's time absorbed within, there's so many things that absorb our time outside of just work and family, the rest of it. So I think that space and time for being able to cook has been compressing massively. So even if you've got that inspiration and enthusiasm, when you're a cook like I am and you are, sure, and you still need inspiration, you still need help as well. And I think there's probably kind of three things I guess I'd see happening. We're seeing a bit of a shift to more occasion led. So customers look at any surveys done on retail stuff, people want to be inspired, like they want to be inspired in retail. And I think wherever you're shopping, whether it's an Aldi, at Tesco, or the supermarkets are available, it doesn't matter which of those it is.
I'm sure Scott's just said two of his customers, just to keep them happy. But
two of you. I'll try and list the rest off as I go through the podcast. Retail bingo. Yeah, I think wherever you shop, you're looking for that inspiration and you want something that can get you excited. And I think one of the things we're seeing with that, and probably the retailers and even the restaurants that are doing this well, is a bit more occasion led versus just cuisine led. Yet again, 40, 50 years ago, you could think it's Chinese, it's Indian, it's whatever. I think that's evolved massively. I think people want to be inspired. We see it done really well within restaurants they've done it to drive up business through the week and stuff, but your Taco Tuesdays and your burger nights and your curry nights, these themes have always been there to inspire you. And I think we're starting to see a bit more of that in retail. Retailers like Aldi and places who are doing a lot more of these kind of themed things to get people excited. It's just doing that job for the customers, giving them a structure to work to. And think about the M&S kind of meal deal that everyone talks about. It's just done a lot of that thinking for you.
Yeah.
But crucially, you still feel you're cooking. And I think that's a real factor that comes into it. And that's probably touching on the piece you were mentioning on kind of pastes and seasonings and stuff. You still want to feel you're cooking. So it's that combination of being inspired and that still feeling I'm actually doing it, rather than it's all being done for me. I'm just sliding it into the microwave or the oven, which is slightly different.
It almost takes away a little bit of the guilt, I think. Like if I think about last night, I'd got some stuff, I'd been organised enough to get some meat out the freezer, but I hadn't been organised to think about what I was going to do with that. And then I got home and my daughter had brought some dough home from school and she wanted to make a pizza. I'm like, well, this wasn't in the plan. But I used they were pork chops. So what would have been a traditional butcher meat, but I used some salt and pepper seasoning on it and stuff. And then did some rice with it and used another seasoning in that. Like, and actually I used packet rice, which I usually would cook my rice, but I was like, I didn't have time. But I felt like I'd put a proper meal on the table. I hadn't, just got a
Yeah.
ready meal out, or because I think, obviously the clues in the name for your business in terms of flavour is still really, really important, but it's not necessarily the primary driver when you are so busy that it's just like, we've just got to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, that's been even, yeah, I've got two little girls now, and it's been even more intensified by being a parent, because you do feel there's a guilt of cooking something for yourself and cheating, but doing it for kids when they're not getting the same level of kind of nutrition coming from stuff, that's a different level of guilt. And I think so many families, mums, dads, will have felt that for a very long time. I think back to my own parents now. I think, how did my mum come up with that many things in a week that we weren't having the same thing 3 or 4 times? I think that feeling that you are cooking, and I think where we've seen that boom in more of your kind of seasoning blends and your pastes, whereby they're still super versatile. You can still feel you're cooking because you can tweak it and change it to what you want to do. Do you want to turn it into a sauce? Do you want to marinate something? Do you want to whatever? It's not that complete finished entity. So you do feel a bit less of that guilt. And we're seeing a lot more people feel like they are scratch cooking or class themselves as scratch cooks, but will still use a paste based. Again, Thai things and cuisines like that are great examples of that. I mean, who's making their own green curry paste every single time? It's great to do, but it's a lot of ingredients. It's quite a lot of cost and usually quite a lot of wastage as well. So again, that's where I think we're seeing that things that can inspire, but not doing that job for me. I'm
Yeah.
still in the kitchen.
Yeah. And we were talking as well about how, like you say, like it used to all be very cuisine led. And I was thinking about it because you said something about people, they think quick dinner. They don't necessarily think it has to be this, like I literally go through the packet. I mean, I feel a bit bad when I like combine like two completely different cuisines and I'm like, oh, this isn't very, foodie. And then I'm just like, do you know what? That's the 2 packets I've got. So it's absolutely fine. So, because I think for people listening, and there'll be lots of people across the industry, and it, applies to whatever product area you live in, work in, feels
Yeah.
like you live there
Yeah.
sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's
That we make so many assumptions about how people are going to use our products, and, that it's going to be in this amazing way that the development chefs have come up with these ideas, but actually, is that the reality? Is that how it's being used? And is what's, I'm thinking about your products, like, is the format that it comes in more of the
Mhm.
driver than it is anything else? To have dried packets in the, so that I've got stuff, for the days when I really haven't thought anything through, versus,
Yep.
the days where I'm like, oh, I'm going to use a paste that has to be kept in the fridge once it's open, like, these are the things that actually consumers are thinking about. They're not thinking, I'm going to put together a banquet on a Tuesday.
Yeah. There's so much practicalities to it, I think. Yeah. And I guess that it's so true that the name of this podcast, everything, we are absorbed and consumed by everything food wise.
Yeah.
And we can be very guilty of thinking that our priorities are the same as every customer's. And I've learned that the hard way, launching products that we thought were brilliant and, would conquer the retailers, and everyone would be buying it and using it in every dish they made because it added this umami flavor to, but customers just didn't know what it was, so they didn't know how to use it.
Are
And
you going to say out loud what it was? I know what it was.
that,
You can
I was
tell
happy to say, yeah, that was a Guinness cooking paste, which, like, I mean, again, I can go into, it's a perfect example of the foodie hole almost we went down with this, which is we kind of saw that Guinness worked amazingly as an ingredient within savory and sweet food. Its top 5 Google searches was cake and stew, basically, and that was without even prompting it on food stuff. So people were already using it that way. So when we started working with Diageo on kind of bringing Guinness to life in food, we spent ages like almost reverse engineering Guinness as a flavor profile. Like, what was it that worked in food, and how can we amplify that? And so we brought through miso and this Chinese mushroom powder and all this other stuff into a flavor profile. It was like a reduction of Guinness, basically, quite Marmite-y in its kind of yeasty flavor profile. But again, added like a super smoky, umami flavor profile to anything you put it in, and like a textural element. And you can see I'm going on about it
He's
now.
like, oh my
It's
God, it was amazing. Why didn't people buy it?
yeah. You put it in a chili and it added like a gloss and a feel to it. It was amazing product. Put it in a jar, beautiful branding, and nobody bought it. I even managed to get the retail buyer, this particular one at Tesco at the time. This is 4 or 5 years ago now. really excited about because he was a foodie as well, and he was a
Yeah.
massive Guinness fan, so loved it, but put it on shelf. It was sat on its own in a jar. It had a fold-out label to explain how to, but no one picked it up. No one knew what it was,
Yeah.
why it was there. I found selling a versatile product is really hard because you're expecting the customer to know what to use it for that first time, and actually you can't do that. You need to do that inspiration for people. Yeah, there's some obviously kind of niche ingredients that people are going in there looking for because they've seen a recipe online, obviously. But I think if you're selling a brand new product in and it's not really crystal clear what that signature serve is, they call it in the cocktail world, but in a food sense, what's that signature dish that it does better than anything else? Most of the time in our world, that involves chicken, but there are other proteins and things involved. But yeah, make sure you get that across really quickly, because if you don't, and we got that wrong with that product, again, you're expecting customers to take a bigger leap, and they're not going to dive into all that foodie stuff that you've
No.
loved about it. If it doesn't shout off shelf, like that's the only steps we've got to do it. So
Yeah. So there's probably things around, it's that activation, isn't it? People knowing what to do with it, recipe cards, but all of this stuff costs money, and getting that standout on shelf. And I think we forget as well, when it comes to new products and stuff, how habitual people are in their shopping. So they're not standing there at the fixture going, oh, what are all the new things? Like, generally they're like, what's the quickest way I can get out of this shop? Sorry to the retailers listening, but that's the reality. It's true, isn't it?
it's very true. And I think you're right. As small and medium-sized brands and challenger brands breaking in, you basically spent most of your money to get it on shelf. So you don't have that is your storefront. And
Yeah.
if it's not shouting really loudly and really obvious what it is, you're not necessarily going to have all that funds to promote it. Like some of the big brands will be able to do with their recipe markers on shelf and promo stickers and all this other stuff that's linking it all up. So yeah, it has to be crystal clear from that shelf edge what it is that it's going to take that first dish. Or yeah, that inspiration piece is.
Yeah. And I think if anybody is listening that's in a challenger brand as well, I think it's a really good point, in that I see a lot of challenger brands that are like, the holy grail is to get into a big retailer. It's to get into Tesco's, for instance. But actually, sometimes, like the route that your business took in terms of getting a good established business in other areas through manufacturers, all of that sort of stuff, gives you a good solid business, so that you've got money to invest once it gets into the retailer. Because once you're in, if you're not hitting your rate of sale, you're out on your ear and that's it. So, I think it's a good lesson for, businesses that are wanting to get into that space. Question, is it a vanity thing, or is it actually going to give you the return that you need?
Yeah, I think you've got that. I found the retailers generally are most interested in what's going on in other places with your brand, and what's that, especially if it's new around, what's that hype generation outside? Is it because you've nailed what you're doing on D2C, but this is the kind of next step up from that? Is it because you've worked really well in independent kind of farm shops and all the rest of it? Or you've been on retaurant menus because you've done these collabs and other stuff with there. And there's no right answer for the exact right way to do it, but I definitely think you're right in terms of retail is always classed as the holy grail. And yes, you can hit volumes in there that you'd struggle to get elsewhere, but actually it is also the most expensive as well. So be prepared that the first couple of years, if you get in there, you're generally not making any money. And that's a really tough if you haven't got kind of collateral, or at least the cash flow to be able to justify it. So it's, we can say this and then everybody will still want to get in there and do that. It's learned the hard way that getting that, we're probably bad now. We used to celebrate massively when we got that listing, and now I'm always a little bit of like, yeah, that's great, but let's see how the first few months goes.
Yeah.
Probably get criticized from my team not celebrating those wins enough, but it is those first few months that you're out there that's absolutely pivotal. And I've had to bring in people into the business who are way better at understanding that than I am. I'm not a retail expert, and yeah, making sure that you get those basics right for the first few months in there. And I think as well, like, there's lots of them out there now, but retailers are willing to be a lot more collaborative on that, whether it's kind of first to market exclusive or one of the incubator schemes or whatever it is. There's different ways now of working a bit closer to that retail to give yourself a bit more breathing room for when you list, right? Just that couple of months and it's okay, you're out after 6 months because you've not hit the rate of sale.
Let's just pause for a moment, because I want to share something with you that might be quite useful. Ever chase a test result at 5:59 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, we've been there too. That's why we're proud to be partnered with IFP Labs, a lab network that actually gets what it's like to work in food. They support businesses across Europe with accredited testing for food, feed, swabs, water, and more. And they do it with a quick turnaround, expert insight, and genuinely reliable service. IFP Labs is a laboratory network made up of companies who we know and trust because they're already supporting the people behind the products you love. Check them out at ifp-labs.com and breathe a little easier next time you've got a product launch riding on that test report. Need to speak up at work but hate the spotlight? Nerves to Narratives is our practical storytelling course for people in food and retail who want to present with more confidence and less panic. Whether you're sharing ideas in meetings or standing up at a big event, you'll learn how to tell your story in a way that lands. It's self-paced, designed for real life, and you can even add on coaching or feedback for extra support. Find out more at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Right, let's get back to the episode. And I think a lot more openness to brands in general, whereas back in, make myself sound really old, back in my day, it was very much trying to drive own label all of the time. And obviously own label is still really important to the retailers, but I think there is a recognition that brand has a place and it can do things that you can't necessarily do in the big machine that is own label.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the most we get approached by retailers now is because the main thing they're looking for is that hype out of store. They're fully aware that they're big marketing engines in their own right as retailers, but that's generally focused on their brand and what they're doing with their label, price wars or whatever else it is. What they know a brand can bring in is what that level of hype is driving out there. Has it gone crazy on TikTok Shop? Is it doing this with a couple of celebrities? Is it got restaurant chains that are doing this at the moment and bringing that audience in? That's the stuff that I feel they value more than anything because they can't provide that. So I think, yeah, definitely there is an acknowledgement that the brands can bring a different level into that, but you have to be able to tell that story really concisely and really compellingly because you don't often get huge time to do that. So but yeah, hype out of store, I think if the more you can shout about that. And some of the big brands you're competing against, like they are good at that, some of them. Your Heinz of this world and various other ones. Lots of the big brands in certain categories are not great at that hype generation out of store. They're very focused on what happens in that store. So again, that's a bit of a differentiator tool for some of the challenger brands coming through, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a way in, isn't it? So tell us about the brand licensing bit, because I feel like this is where you've brought your previous career together with, what you do at the Flava People. But it isn't just like you said, it's not just slap a Guinness label on things and it will sell. I know you've learnt some lessons there. So tell us about that.
I think licensing, boomed in the UK over the last few years in food and drink. Food and drink is the second biggest growth category in licensing after entertainment, which is all your toys and movies and Stranger Things and all that sort of stuff, which you'll know full well about. But we are still a fraction of what the home of licensing, which is generally the USA, do out there. You go and stand in front of a shelf in any American retailer and you will see a plethora of different restaurant brands, entertainment brands, everything coming across. It's pretty eye-opening actually when you see it. But I think in the UK, we've got into that a little bit slowly, and then like everything is then boomed and gone really fast, partly because of obviously being able to talk about those brands on social media and stuff. But I think we got into it originally because I'd worked with a couple of the spirit booze brands before. We originally were, again, always looking at where's that kind of category gap that a brand could potentially fill and does it have credibility to play in that space. And first one we did that for was Jim Beam, the bourbon brand. There was a big boom in kind of Americana type stuff, but that could add like a premium level to it by adding that brand into it. And it could give us as a business and a smaller business some ownership over that innovation, which I think for SMEs is really key when you're in such a cutthroat world. Yeah, it gave us that ownership over that. So that was a whole range of kind of Jim Beam bourbon barbecue products and everything. That was the first time for us. We kind of realized we could take a brand license and maximize it across the different sectors that we operated in, but give us a real differentiator and something ownable when we're going in there with. So that was the start of our licensing journey. And I guess since then we've done that with quite a few other kind of spirit and beer brands like Guinness and Bailey's, and do a lot of work with Diageo, who are great to work with, but then also into other areas like Yo Sushi. We do all of their sauces and savory stuff that goes into the major retailers. Again, there was a gap there with kind of at that point accessible Japanese. It was seen as quite functional and expensive, and we wanted, it was a fun brand, so it was a way of bringing that kind of personality into Japanese, and that's still out there in retail now. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I've definitely fully aware that you cannot just slap a big brand, however big that brand is. Like Guinness, there's not many bigger brands in the world, and definitely not in the UK at the moment than Guinness. But again, you can't just stick the Guinness label on it and stick it in a category that's not relevant and expect it to sell. It doesn't work, or it's going to be very, very expensive to try and make it work. Yeah, we're all about that kind of, what's that credible gap? What's that credible gap that we can properly play? If there isn't one, we should be doing it. Is the simple.
I was going to say, how do you know that you're doing the wrong thing? And it's because you're just doing it because it seems like a nice idea. You haven't got the insight behind it of the credibility.
Yeah, I guess my test with the team here now on, because it's great, and it's so easy. I guess one piece of advice I would give to business is like, it's so easy to be flattered by a massive brand coming and saying, we want to do some licensing stuff with you. That might be a massive restaurant, it might be a massive entertainment brand, it might be whatever, but it doesn't matter how big. I think what we see is we're kind of experts in our category, and is there a genuine gap in that category? And if we cook the brand off that packaging, would it be seen as genuine innovation in its own right? And then the brand is the cherry on top. That's the communication, it's the recognition, it's the premiumness, it's the rest of it. But would it work as innovation in its own right? And, there's other brands that I'm sure might disagree with that. But I think for us as an SME, we don't have those funds to be able to tell every single person in the UK about it. It's that innovation that gets it notified. That's what gets us those listings. That's what gets that awareness. And the brand just takes it to a different level if you've done it right.
Yeah.
That's generally the test. If it's just another tomato ketchup with no real innovation in it, even if we stick Guinness on it, it's going to be really expensive for us to make it work, particularly in retail. But that applies in food service and other sectors as well, because it's going to be a bit more expensive. So again, how do you justify that premium? So yeah,
there's definitely something in that, isn't it? I know back, when I worked in development years ago, looking at licensing, it does cost money. That's why brands cost more, because you're paying for their own, marketing budgets that they're using elsewhere. So it's like you say, it isn't just about they're a big brand, so it's going to work. You've got to think, is a consumer going to be willing to pay more for the fact that it's got that brand on the pack? Not if it doesn't sort of, do anything new or different for them anyway.
No. Oh, you might get it pick up that first time. I think there's a very old kind of cliche marketing thing that is always stuck in my head, which is around your marketing is asking someone on a date, your branding is why they say yes. And I think I take that another level further than that, which is that brand, that license you use might be that reason why people say yes and go into it. But if the product isn't good enough, that's the third level. You might get that first time purchase, but you won't get purchase again. And that is crucial, because otherwise it's just a promotional gimmick. And if that's what it is, fine. You're doing a collab, some brands have done loads of collabs and got loads of awareness off the back of it. Do they sell loads? Like some of the data we've seen, not necessarily, no. But actually they're just using it to bring attention to their wider brand or whatever. That's fine, as long as that's your purpose. But if you're looking for a longer term partnership and a genuine license opportunity, I think you have to be confident that that product is going to be getting people coming back numerous times, because otherwise it's just going to be a short-lived project.
Yeah. Dubai chocolate came to mind for me there, like the massive blow up of it, and then the mountains of it being left behind. It's knowing, isn't it, when you are jumping on a short-term trend. And there are things that have come out of Dubai chocolate that, pistachio flavour and this, that and the other that are, carrying on, but it was a short-lived thing. And it's being able to spot, isn't it, the difference between that short-term, this is just going to be a fad, I'm thinking prime drinks as well and all of that, versus this is going to be a long-term thing. And what are you wanting it to do for your business or your brand? But ultimately it comes down to flavour. I love the fact that you're therefore called the Flava People, because if people are, if it's not delivering on flavour, and I think I'm sure you don't forget about that because you are a flavour business, but I think we can forget sometimes what we get so wrapped up in what is, how are we going to activate the product? How are we, what's the occasion, this, that, and the other. All of that stuff matters, but at the heart of it is the product. And I work with a lot of product development teams in manufacturers and stuff that get really frustrated that the people around them seem to forget that that is actually the most important thing, that it tastes right. You can get it as efficient on the line as you want and all of that, but if it's not delivering on flavour, people are not going to buy it again.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely, our kind of mantra internally is flavour makes the meal. It's that pivotal bit that determines whether you come back to it and cook it again. It's that bit whether it's remarkable, you truly remark on it and say something. It's the same in restaurants, the same in retailers. It's that bit that comes back. Yes, you can. And you talk about example before, you've got really nice protein that makes a difference, and nice chicken and nice pepper, and potatoes are done in a certain way. But that flavor can be that bit which distinguishes whether it's something you forget or something that's genuinely remarkable and exciting and you talk about and you go back to. And I think the good thing we have within our power is that sauces and seasonings can be switched and changed. They can evolve as trends evolve, but they're still a constant, like whatever happens. And I'm amazed with, we've got 5,500 recipes on our system, but in reality, it's the same kind of 20, 30. There's sometimes different names, but the very similar flavor profiles. We sold a huge amount of kind of chip shop style curry sauce for years. We now sell a huge amount of katsu curry sauce. There's not ginormous difference between them, but there is these consistencies across stuff that I think it doesn't change as wildly as you think. These new cuisines come in and things like Korean, for example, but surprise, surprise, like the key flavors that have come out of Korean that are really popular, like a Korean style barbecue and a Korean style hot sauce, like, yeah, different notes to them, very much so with gochujang and stuff like that. But actually the flavors themselves remain pretty consistent. At least those ones that people having on repeat multiple times a week, they don't change massively. They just get a little bit modernized. And I think that's the key thing we try and do, is that flavor is that, in our opinion, clearly that most important part of the meal, but you still got to keep it exciting and keep it evolving to make sure people kind of keep coming back to you as a brand. Essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Whoever we work with in food, like that's kind of our job, is to try and keep dragging it back to the flavor piece of saying, it's so easy to dilute that with all those other factors that you mentioned. But if you do dilute that, you end up with a brilliant campaign and a brilliant looking brand, but again, a product that people just don't come back to. And that's a huge amount of innovation and investment has gone into something that might only last 6 months to a year in retail or on food service. So yeah, I think get that bit right is a really key factor, and that's what we try and do with all of our customers.
Yeah. And you work with, obviously you do stuff to retail, but you work with manufacturers as well and help them with flavor profiles and stuff, don't you? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and that's basically the same sort of things we're talking about there, is not getting sucked into hype, but making sure you've got those, again, core staples. One of the retailers we work with have the same formula every time, which is we launch in waves of 4 flavors. There's always 3 big hitters and one that's kind of off the wall, and that one sometimes stays in, and there's numerous examples of when it has, but most of the time doesn't. But it brings people to the range, it brings people to the core, and I think that's kind of how we work with any of our customers, is make sure you've got those core basics. They might be called something, what we call a Korean sauce or a umami miso sauce in one area might be called some extra tasty in another area. It depends what market you're in, but actually the flavor profiles within it are pretty similar. So I think, we always try to make sure we've got that good blend of real core big hitters and, or what we call those mainstream accessible ones, or those attention bringing exciting ones that ultimately are what going to rope people in maybe, and it's what's going to get the attention online and other areas, back to that kind of hype piece.
Yeah. So I think what we're saying is consumers are changing the way they do things, but they don't actually change that much in terms of the flavour profiles. There's short-term trends, but actually flavours overall are, we kind of like the same sorts of things. It evolves slowly, but you've got to push around the edges. Like you've always got to have your core, but you've got to push around the edges. What else have we said? And
licensing can be a powerful tool.
It can be powerful, but only if you do it right. Yeah.
And there's genuine innovation there. I don't think, again, you'll say you've got lots of innovation teams in the UK, like that part of it is still absolutely crucial. Just because you've got a big brand, you still need to do that innovative thinking and making sure that it's got something really unique that it's bringing to the category. If you can get that right and you marry genuine innovation with a really powerful brand, that's when we've seen some big successes out there. So I think, and it's not always super complex, but it's just getting that bit right, that formula right, I feel.
Yeah. This has been a really great conversation. Looking back at your career and probably both sides of it, so the brand work that you were doing before you joined the family business, and since you've been doing that, if you were to look back over that career, what, I guess, is the thing that you would kind of wish you had known back at the start of it all?
I'd probably, if I asked my team today, I know exactly what they'd say, which is that I love brand and I love food. So I'm a shiny toy syndrome person.
Hmm.
I will get drawn to the next new brand, to the next new flavor. And something I learned probably in brand world before that is just when you start getting bored of that brand product campaign is usually just about when most consumers have first noticed it.
Yep.
And it's so easy to move on because you've been involved in it. You know, we know how long things take to launch in food for 2 years, 5 years in some cases, crazy amounts of time. So by the time it's out there and you're starting to push it, people get bored of it and they pull it. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is absolutely stick to your guns, focus, make sure that you give products and brands the support they need post launch and don't just immediately move to the next shiny thing because you probably failing out just before you start to get that momentum behind products that are there. So yeah, as a brand and a food person, make sure you've got a team around you who remind you of that. And yeah, you don't get dragged into the next shiny new toy, which I will probably even later today.
Yeah. Well, it actually segues really well into the next episode that I'm recording with a lady called Susan Arkley, who she's an MPD consultant, but we're going to be talking about different types of creativity. And what this shows is this end. So if you are the sort of person that like wants to come up with new ideas, can spot the links in there, like those people are really, really important for innovation. But so are the people that sculpt it, make sure it happens, the steady people that make sure the activation happens, that do the bit that we feel is boring. So I think I love what you just said then, because it's about recognizing that that is a strength of yours, that you can spot opportunities and go shiny, shiny, but you have to have the people around that go, yep, shiny, shiny, but we're just focusing on this for now, you know, we'll move on to that. So
Yeah, you know, you generally can't build a sustainable business without both sets of those people. So yeah, I think the key is recognizing which one you are
yeah,
rather than thinking you're the
yes.
opposite. But yeah, no, that's really crucial lessons. I'm sure.
Well, for people listening, you need to come and listen to the Susan episode when I've recorded it,
Right,
which I'm going to be doing shortly.
I will do that. It might help.
Yes, I think it will help. You might want to get Susan in to do this with your team. Thank you, Scott. It's been a really interesting conversation. If people want to connect with you or find out more about the Flava People, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, Flava People, best place is online, and please connect with me on LinkedIn as well, because always happy to come and meet and speak to people about kind of some of those exciting projects, but also just how to make that flavor part of things sustainable and how that can be a crucial part in people's brands and projects and businesses. And I think that's where we love to talk about that and love to help shape that out for people as well. So yeah, please connect up with me and the business on LinkedIn, and we also try and share some insights on some of that flavor stuff as much as we can as well.
Thank you so much, Scott. And I will see everybody else next week. See you later. Before we finish, there's a few insights from that conversation with Scott that are really worth taking away, and especially if you are working product development or in a brand team. First, people rarely do what we think we're going to do with our products. We sometimes design products with that idealised version of how we think people are going to use it. The perfectly planned meal, authenticity, a recipe followed step by step. But most consumers are running around, juggling work, family, time pressure. They're improvising, they're mixing ingredients, and they're looking for products that help them get a good meal on the table quickly. Secondly, formats actually matter as much as flavour. Products that work well today are often the ones that give people a starting point rather than just the finished product. And that's why the Flava People were talking about, you know, he was talking about how they've adapted over time because the way people do things is different. So thinking about formats and getting that balance between convenience and people feeling like they're doing something with their food. Because I think with the whole ultra processed foods movement, there is this kind of, you still feel like you want to be doing something yourself. And the third one is that big trap of making assumptions not just about how the products will be used, but what consumers value, what they're going to do with it. But as Scott's story shows, the business that succeeded and has succeeded over time is because they have stayed close to the real behaviour that's going on and adapting to those habits. Because it's not just about creating something new, it's about creating something that genuinely fits into people's lives. So I think that is my key takeaway, really thinking about how you adapt along with the consumer. Thanks for listening to The Fearless Foodie. If you enjoyed this episode, please do follow the podcast, leave a rating or review and share it with someone else in the food industry who might find it helpful. And as always, be bold, be brave, be fearless. That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be fearless.